everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As you are coming in, we are very excited that you are joining us again this evening and decided to spend an hour with good friends and good talk and hopefully setting you up for the next week. And just thank you for being here. We're honored this evening to have a dear, dear friend and one of the people in my life who I call a leader, somebody who I want to aspire to be. Mr. Koji Mori is going to be with us talking in just a few minutes. Koji is a reformed band person who saw the light and has been teaching orchestra for, gosh, a number of years now, right? Are we at like seven now,
Like
Koji?
10,
10.
just over
Okay.
10.
Wow, exactly. Yeah. So he's seen things, he's experienced things, and all that stuff. But I think especially the idea of coming into different cultures, different circumstances is going to be a little bit of the theme of the evening and how he's managed and maneuvered through that. We hope you've had a really good week, and we hope that there are a lot of good things that you can share with us as we come to the end of the meeting tonight. We'll hopefully go into some small groups and share a little bit of some of the experiences that we've had and what Koji talks about, but also just those good things that we're bringing to the table. I can't see if Julie is on here yet tonight. Each Monday, I get an email from Julie saying, "Have a great week," and I can't tell you, like I see it. I've seen it the last two Mondays, and I'm like, oh, I for whatever reason, it just lowers my level of anxiety, and I hope that that's what tonight does for you as we move forward. And we hope you'll also tell some of your friends about who we are and what we do. To get us started is our founder of the Servant Leadership Association for Music, who needs no introduction from me, but we're really excited that he's going to spend a little bit of time with us with our beginning words of wisdom. So please, Dr. Tim Lautzenheiser, take it away.
Thanks, Bobby. And it's good to see everybody. It's going to be a great night. Um, my words of wisdom changed based on a conversation that I had with Scott Rush on the telephone. We were talking the other day, and I said, I've come to the frightening conclusion that there is no frightening conclusion. And Scott, we both chuckled, and then it just got quiet, right, Scott? And he said, wait a minute, that's really deep. And it is when you think about it, because the whole idea is the outside world is not going to change. We're going to have flat tires. Just when we think everything's in place, the electricity goes off, the rent goes up. They've changed the schedule. The theater people forgot to take the stuff off the stage, so you can't have rehearsal there. Your first chair violin or your first chair trumpet has COVID, and we keep thinking as soon as we get at the end of the semester and start the new semester, man, then it's going to be straight on. And the truth is, it never is. The conclusion is there's no conclusion. Now, that kind of sounds a little negative. However, if that's the case and we know that's going to happen, we can go back to our friend attitude and reset it to accept everything it is. We have to come to grips with happiness isn't getting what you want, happiness is wanting what you get. And when we shift that, whatever comes up, we're ready to take it on and know that it's part of the plan. Now, whether you believe in divine intervention or that everything's already calculated and we're merely living it out, that doesn't make any difference. We have been given one gift, our attitude. So I would invite you all to look at this and go, wait a minute, I got it made. I'm a music educator. I get to do what I love to do. For the most part, they pay me to do it. Maybe not enough, but enough to get by. And I still have the best students in the school, and I get to do what I love. I get to teach the art form that I love most, music. So I've come to the frightening conclusion there's no frightening conclusion. I've also come to the frightening conclusion that we can make our world whatever we want it to be. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, and we control who we are. It's my words of wisdom.
Thanks so much, Tim. That idea of attitude being the thing that we control has echoed through my mind several times in the past few weeks as marching bands have been crazy, fall concerts have been going on, and it is a thing where we have to decide that that little trombone player that still can't figure out which end to blow into, our attitude toward them is really what they are going to take away from music
Absolutely.
in our experience or in our time together. So thank you so much. Well, our first president of the Servant Leadership Association for Music is Mr. Scott Rush, and no stranger to especially music education and building curricula. And he's got some quick tips for us that can you can put into place starting Monday morning and to make your teaching and your students better. So Scott, take it away.
Well, good evening, everybody. I hope you've had a fantastic week. I'm going to talk a little bit about score study, and that's going to sound strange, but I would also be remiss if I didn't say probably most of this came from the class that I took from Frank Batista. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you that he just came out with a new book. You know, he's 94 years old, and he just came out with a new book, and this is what I'm reading right now, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So some basic thoughts about score study. And like I said, a lot of these probably came from my class with Frank Battisti. Number one, do research about the piece, the composer, and read the program notes. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say, but you know, so many times we just kind of give a downbeat, right? And so there's got to be some preparation that happens. Number two, explore other works by the composer. And that also includes the time period when the piece was written. Number three, study the score and get an inner hearing. So it's important that we interpret, that we get our own inner hearing of the piece. Number four, form an interpretation based on knowledge, emotion, and the inner hearing. So part of what we want to do is we want to find what the music is telling us to do, right? Kind of the intuitive response to music. And then number five, then listen to multiple versions of the same work. You know, there's some people who think that after you do the inner hearing that you actually shouldn't listen to recordings. And I actually believe the opposite. I think, I'll give you an example. The piece Gumsuckers March. In my library, I've got a version for band, a version for orchestra, a version for two pianos, even a piano roll version of it. And this, you know, always allows you to truly discover the work because you hear it in different ways. And then we can really not just discover it, but think about the composer's intent and then glean that intuitive response. But even all of that is a means to an end. And the idea being that we want to create a culture where students can be truly collaborative and that they can respond to each other and make music. And that's that place where content and context do this. Because when you have that happening, then they can truly make music. So those are my tips, Bobby.
Thanks so much, Scott. We really appreciate it. And just in case you wanted some more of those, I wanted to put a plug in right here for our presentation that we'll be doing at Midwest. We have several folks that are here tonight that will be doing. I see young Kim down there as well, and Cecilia up there. And I know a number of others. David is here. And I'd love for them to maybe at the end tonight talk a little bit about what what we're going to present at Midwest and when it is, so that we can all kind of plan our schedules around that, if you all don't mind. Uh, Before we do that, though, I want to introduce Koji Mori. I met Koji in 2013. I was told about him at Midwest in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, and told, hey, man, if you're going to do some type of leadership stuff, this is the guy that you want on your team. And he actually was the first person that I hired for our summer symposium, Drum Major Institute. And from the moment that we met, it was just very much like we vibed. There's no ego, there's no malice. It is very much about for kids and music. And then whatever we have to do to make that happen, that's what we're going to do. And he and I have gone through some fires together for sure, and always still standing arm in arm. And so he's one of those people in my life that is very much a pillar. Just like you heard Maurice last week, These are kind of my heroes, right in order. Koji went to Kennesaw Mountain High School, was a trumpet player there, and then went to Columbus State University for undergrad, and then to University of Georgia for his master's degree, and then has an educational specialist degree on top of that. Started teaching band at Lassiter High School. Is that right, Koji, or was there a place right before Lassiter?
I taught at a middle school for a couple of years.
That's right.
First. Yep.
He taught at a middle school for a couple of years, band, then was the assistant band director at Lassiter for a few years. And then the opportunity to do band and orchestra at Lassiter opened up. And he started doing that, and I could feel him slipping to the dark side very quickly. No, it was just he had such he was so adept at music, and anything he doesn't quite know, he is just intense about learning that and growing. And then from there, the job at Harrison High School came open for orchestra, and it was a program that was maybe not at its peak at that point. And Koji went there, and they've really come to a great place, which culminated this past year of playing at the National Festival in Indianapolis. So from humble beginnings as a mere trumpet player, and those of you who are trumpet players know that that's pretty laughable with the egos that come along with that, to now being an orchestra director, a very fine orchestra program in Harrison High School. Please, everyone, welcome Mr. Koji Mori.
Oh, thank you, Bobby. Thank you so much. It's good to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Today, I just want to talk about a few things that I think a lot of us have either gone through or are currently going through, or you may go through in the future. And one of those things is transitioning into a program. And then the other part is how do we create a culture? And I think that looks a little bit different for everybody. But a little bit about my background. I started teaching middle school band about 15 years ago. And it was right during the recession time period. So I think it was a halftime band position, and I was trying to apply anywhere out of state, and in my radius was like a 200-mile radius, and this was the only job that was available at the time. And so I went into teaching because I didn't really want to work at the restaurant I was working at anymore, and it was. I went into teaching for the money, to be honest with you, because I was just trying to survive. Can I get something to put a roof over my head? And so I took this middle school band job, and funny enough, it was somebody that knew Freddie Martin, who had worked with in the summer and was a big hero of mine. And so he helped me get in touch with this person, and I was the third band director. And it was a very interesting experience. I learned about theory and how to teach and how to be a great musician. And one of the things, there was always a first period and a second period group in the band. But somehow this band director had managed to create a third period, which doesn't exist. And so there were two band rooms, and he said, hey, you're going to teach 7-3 now. I got 7-1, I got 7-2, you go teach 7-3. And I'm like, what is that? That doesn't even exist. And it was all of the students who were unwieldy and couldn't sit in the chair. So they were all put in a room. And I remember my first week, they came in and kids were like jumping. It was a zoo. And I was the one looking for the emergency button, pressing that white button to call the administrators. And my classroom management didn't exist because I didn't know what that was. What do you mean they're not ready to learn? And so that was a big lesson for my journey, and starting with how do I capture the attention of 12-year-olds so that we can just function, not even learn music, just so we can function as a class. And those beginnings, I have so much just gratefulness for that, because I learned a lot about students and how they communicate, but really more importantly, what connects with the student, what matters to them, and really understanding and learning the concept of meeting students where they are. So I did the middle school thing. I'm really glad of that. I always wanted to teach high school orchestra, and I came to that realization as I was with the Phantom Regiment. We played these arrangements, and I loved the music, which is great. But I was a senior in college, and I had no string background. So I took this middle school band job, and then there was a position at Lassiter that came open. I was teaching band and orchestra, and I jumped on that and was very thankful to have the position. And I got to experience a lot of things in the 5 years that I was there. Work-life balance or lack thereof in the beginning, how to learn as much as you can, how to learn about things that I had no idea, transitions galore with working with lots of people. And so I was really excited about that. And then I came to Harrison afterwards, and it's been a great journey. But in my first 2 years, I probably worked with about 7 different band directors, and it was just a revolving door. Illnesses, people coming and going, various reasons. And so when I got to Lassiter, that was also a big transition time. And I thought, hey, no problem. I've already gone through many transitions. But I learned a lot in that environment of how do I transition and how do I teach band kids and orchestra kids, and how different is that? And the reality is, aside from the medium of the instruments that are obviously different, there are so many more similarities. Kids are kids. And at the end of the day, kids want to know, do you care? And they don't really care what you say or how much you know, unless they really know that you care about them. And are you worth somebody that they can give a respect to? And it's not something that you try to buy or try to garner or try to, just gain. It's something that's earned for sure, but it's something that has to be given, and somebody has to start it. And I think it's the job of the teacher, young or old, to start that process with, how do I respect my students? And maybe even more important than that, how do I make them feel respected? So transitioning with that program was really interesting. And I took a lot of the lessons that I learned from teaching middle school. And I remember there was one student that came up who was a trumpet player and had one of the worst attitude 7th graders that I've had ever. And it turns out one day he stayed after class, and he was just mad, and I called him out, and I'd probably yelled something, and he stayed afterwards. All the students were gone, and he just had tears streaming down his face. And he said, "You would never understand. Your life is so perfect." And he described how he came from a broken home and dad wasn't home. And that really hit home for me, because that was very relatable for myself, as I didn't have a father very close growing up and who lived in a different country. And it was at that moment when I was able to go, hey, I'm so glad you shared that with me. And I shared a little bit about my story, and the connection happened where he finally realized that I'm a human being that is imperfect and have hurts as well. And that next day, he came in with the best posture. He came in with he wasn't very loud, but you could tell from his body language, and you could tell with his presence that he gave his best shot, and other kids started to notice. And that really helped me learn the value of how much it matters what we do, and not just teaching music. That's super important. But how do we teach kids how to be good humans? How do we teach them to feel and be okay to feel like you went through hurt? That's awful. It's okay to feel that way. Let's help you move forward from that. And how can we channel those frustrations, or how can we channel that to something positive and something that can be really beneficial for you? And so when I got to Lassiter, there were lots of transitional elements, working with new colleagues, new students, lots of various degrees of opinions on, this is new, everything feels very different from what it was. How do we navigate this? There's lots of, contention, and definitely a lot of negative moments, a lot of positive moments too. But how do we navigate that? And I thought about, well, who's on the leadership team? But you know what? It's not always about who's on the leadership team. It's about who are the most influential students. And so when I think about transition, I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. Why do you do what you do? What is your vision for why you teach? Why did you want to get into the profession in the first place? For me, it was I wanted to teach music, or that's what I thought. And I wanted to help people. Those were the two kind of elements. And I noticed from teaching middle school and connecting with that young man that, I got to teach him how to play scales or how to play music. But I got to connect with a student that I know it made a huge impact on his life. and how he approached everything he did after that. And so I thought about how can I, that's kind of my why. Why do I do what I do? Because I know it makes a difference to students. And it doesn't matter if they play a string instrument, it doesn't matter if they sing, it doesn't matter if they're waving arms, whatever it is, how can I leave an impact? And so part of that is knowing your why. And I think, Simon Sinek has that great book with the golden circles, do you know your why? And that's a really great one that I kind of navigated through COVID to kind of write out what is it and how do I do, and then why do I do what I do. But it's about building relationships. So transitioning into a program is huge. I think there's no easy way. There are better ways to do things than others for sure. And I've seen some really great positive transition changes where the previous director sets up the new director by introducing them to the new band or to the new orchestra. And then the students already have some kind of buy-in because they've had that approval or that seal of approval from the previous director. I've also seen, the complete opposite of that, and what happens when there is no approval, or what happens when there's just no information and we have a new person, and how do students react to that? Students are always comfortable with what was. It doesn't matter if it was a good tradition. Whatever was tradition is what's comfortable, and comfort is what students hold on to. And I think that's why students don't like change. They don't like change because it's uncomfortable. And even if it's not a good thing, they'd rather do something that's not good because it's comfortable. And so how can we establish a change, and how much change do we do? So, when I was teaching band and orchestra, there are things that we can control and there are things that we cannot control. And I think if we can focus on the things that we can control, that makes a huge difference. So I was an assistant band director. I didn't have a lot of say in this is definitively what the show is going to be. This is exactly what's going to happen. Here's how we're going to do it. My job was to assist, and how can I be the best assistant that I can? And so on all my roles as an assistant, whether it was teaching band or orchestra, I thought about, okay, well, I know I don't know the most. I know that I'm not the best, player or even explainer or teacher, but I know I can ask a lot of questions, and I know that I'm very curious, and I think I'm going to use that as my superpower. So I decided to just ask, and whether it was, the directors that were around me, or maybe previous directors that were at the school before, or just older people who knew what they were doing, or who I thought knew what they were doing, that helped a ton. And so for any young teachers out there, I think, finding a mentor, or if you don't have a mentor, sometimes it just starts asking lots of questions. And whenever you can get with people who are older than you, whether it's county meetings or district events, that is where I learned a ton, the term of talking shop, and learning about that so that I could help assist the director and support their vision. And then the second part was, okay, how can I connect with the students? And at first, when you're starting a program, obviously you don't know anybody or any of the students. So what do you do? What are practical things you can do? And I found out, the simple things like just holding the door open at the beginning of class and just saying hi and smiling at them. And sometimes it's not even saying hi. You just smile at them, and every other student, hey, it's good to see you, or welcome to class, or just starting the day with, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. And maybe it's a random topic or a random idea, but sometimes just a smile and a wave, even from across the hall where you barely know the student. And I'm thinking, wait, was his name Brian or Kevin? But just smiling at them and saying hi, that has huge power for both older students doing that from the servant leadership model of our student leadership team, to myself doing it for students. Wow, I mean, the students notice that, and they don't always say it, but I notice that they start to gravitate more. They start coming early in the mornings to the room. They start being comfortable in the room that you have. And those small things come a long way. And then just asking them about things that have nothing to do with your topic of what you're teaching. So not asking them, do you have your A major scale memorized, but like, hey, I know you're playing volleyball. Tell me about that. Like, oh, that's amazing. You're already have a scholarship, and you've already been accepted. Those kind of conversations. You like rock climbing, you like to do soccer, you like to finding out about like, what do your students like to do outside of school? We'd love to think that they love playing their instrument or they love to sing all the time. And that's just a part of them. So what's the other part of them? So those small discussions over time, that's what I think builds that relationship. And then as you observe, and you don't always have to say a lot, I think a lot of times just saying nothing, just watching, how students interact with each other. You can tell who are the most influential students in the program. It's not always the students with the titled leadership positions. A lot of times it's the non-titled students who are either the loudest or maybe the best player, maybe not. But there are different kinds of leaders. And can you pick out those students in your program? Can you see who are the ones that they say, oh, this sucks? And everybody is on board with that. And they, automatically, you thought everything was going well and the whole room comes down. And vice versa. There are students that are like, oh, I love this piece. And any skepticism about that piece you chose becomes a grand hit. It's amazing. And so finding those students, and then how can you build a good connection with those students? Do you have a good relationship? Do you have any kind of relationship with them? And so building on those is huge. And I think it just starts with simple questions like, how are you? And genuinely asking them, how are you? And if they say they're fine, great. Come back and ask them again. Hey, I noticed that you seem a little low today compared to normal. Is everything okay? And I find that over time, students, they end up coming to my office and they ask, hey, can I talk to you about this? Absolutely. Let's have a discussion about it. And they're so appreciative and they feel seen. And then when they feel seen, that's when they feel like, okay, I enjoy this class, not just because of the content, but because I feel like I'm cared for. And they're never going to say that out loud, but you can see it through how they act. You can see it through their body language. You can see it through how they carry themselves, how they speak up about things. When I transitioned to the school that I'm at now, it was just a different culture when I got there. And there was a really good family culture and the students really loved each other and they liked each other a lot. But there was a lot of skepticism because they knew that I came from teaching band, even though I was teaching orchestra at the same time. And so there wasn't a huge amount of acceptance in the beginning when I started. And there was a lot of, why is this person the teacher? They clearly missed their old teacher, which I understand. She was lovely and a super kind human. But there were just some philosophical differences that I had with what I wanted to do with the program. But I couldn't just go guns a-blazing and change everything, especially when they already didn't like me. They didn't know me, but I was different enough and I looked different than their previous teacher. And that alone was enough to go, nope, you don't have my respect yet. And I understood that. And at the same time, their room was being remodeled. The county had just gotten approval to kind of refurbish the room. So they blew it up and repainted the room. So it looked completely different. And I remember students walking into the room after it was done and they said, wow, it feels like a hospital in here. And they were just so sad and depressed. And for probably the first month of school, where I was used to students coming into the band room or the orchestra room before school starts to hang out and talk, nobody was in the room. It was silent. And I didn't mind a lot because I had so much to catch up on and there was a lot of work time for me. But at the same time, I thought, wow, I hope that can change. I know there's contention because I'm different or they don't know me well enough yet. But I hope that culture can change to where they're excited to come back to the room. They're excited to come in and they can talk or do homework or practice. That's great too. But I just wanted them to have a home that's inviting again and comfortable again. And so I'd say for the first half of the year, it got so bad that I remember the concertmaster of my top group said, hey, we really need to have a conversation in front of the whole class. And she said, can we talk? And I said, sure. And so I sat down where she was and she got up on the podium and sat down and they continued to express their not only disinterest, but all of the things that they didn't approve of that we were doing. And everybody got to speak. And I just listened because I wanted to hear them out. I didn't get upset. I didn't get angry about it. And it was really interesting for me to hear about things that were, they were, a lot of it was just different. A lot of it was too, I probably made them play all class period, which is maybe just a little bit different. I had them do, boring warm-up exercises because I knew it was good fundamentals for them and good vegetables for them. And I didn't let them go off in the side rooms and goof off and do nothing. They asked me if they could make pancakes in the back room, and I said no. And so I knew that was not okay too. And those were just some of the things, right?
Koji, I make pancakes in the back of the room all the time. I don't know why you're so angry and evil about that.
Again,
yeah, I know Paul.
I was a
does
younger
too.
teacher, less experienced.
There it is.
Okay?
Now, yes.
I didn't know.
So you're saying I'm an old teacher, and that's when that happens. I got
You're just a wiser one. Yeah.
Wait till you get to bacon level.
That's right.
That's right. And at the end of this conversation, though, the concertmaster was on the podium, and one of the most quiet students who hardly spoke anything, but was well revered by the students because she was an amazing player, an all-state player. And she stood up in front of the class and expressed, she spoke more in that 30 seconds than I'd ever heard her speak in like 4 months. And she expressed how we haven't even given him a chance. I don't know why you guys are so upset about this. And she took a stance for me like no other, and I'll never forget this student. And she was just passionate about, this is actually making us better. Just watch. And so the season continues, and we get to our festival time where we're going to contests, and we play our performance. And mind you, I had picked these 3 selections. I thought it was appropriate for the group, very challenging for them. And before maybe a few weeks before the performance, the student leaders, the student president, and the student vice president came up to me and said, "Hey, we just need to talk to you." I said, "Sure, come on in." So they came into the office and they said, "Hey, nobody likes these selections that you chose, and nobody wants to play them." And they continued to express why they didn't like it. And so I looked at them and I said, "Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Unfortunately, we're too close to performance time to be able to make any of those changes. So this is going to be what we're going to play." And it was fascinating because the next week we had camp, and I had scheduled to bring in all these outside clinicians. And it was perfect because, again, as I think if you've ever brought in an outside clinician, even if you've said the same thing, when somebody new comes in, it's fairy dust and magic. And it is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And so that's exactly what happened. These pieces that we chose, or that I chose, ended up becoming major hits. We played in the performance. They got these straight superior performances. They looked at the score sheets from judges, and they knew the judges I had nothing to do with that because I was just the new kid on the block. And they turned around to me and they said, "Mr. Mori, we've never gotten scores like this." And they were just so happy about it. And there were kids crying on the stage because the piece they hated turned out to be their favorite piece they've ever played. And it was huge. And it wasn't, and there were a couple things that I could have done. Like I said, "I told you so, gotcha." But it wasn't about that. It was about, okay, how can students realize, really, how can people realize that change isn't always a bad thing? And how do we adapt to that? And we all come to that conclusion at different times. Mm-hmm. And so as we're working on transitioning, if you're going through a transitioning process in your band program or orchestra program or choir program, I'd say, one, have patience for sure, but continue to build the relationships. Because even though there were some pretty snarky students that really expressed their disinterest of me, there were a lot of kind students as well. And the junior class in particular that I was able to build more relationships that next year were my huge biggest advocates. And they were like, oh, they would do anything. If I said, "Hey, we're going to play long tones for all class today," they'd be like, "Yes, sir, let's do it." And that was the difference, was what kind of relationship do you have? And how can you build that positive relationship with those kids? And it doesn't always have to be giving candy. That can help, right? That extrinsic motivation can certainly help, especially the younger they are. Those 6th, 7th, 8th graders certainly love that. And I think that once you get into that, end of 9th grade, that 10 through 12 range, that intrinsic motivation on how can we get students to want to do the things that we'd like to have them do. And I think a lot of it is comparing it, with things that they know. A wise teacher once told me, how do you get them to do warm-ups? Well, compare it with the sports that they do. Put on a soccer game. And this awesome teacher once told me, and he showed me, and it was the soccer match, and it was before the game started, and they were just warming up, doing simple exercises, jogging. And he said, "Hey, do you know? Do you think they don't know how to do those exercises?" I said, "No. I mean, they're just warming up. Yeah, they're getting their muscles warm, their legs warm. They're making sure that everything is fitting correctly." And that's what warm-ups are. That's what daily warm-ups are. That's what these exercises are for. And when I explained that, because my community is a very, Friday Night Lights, sports heavy culture. And when I explained it that way to the students, it like clicked immediately. They're like, oh, okay. So yes, it's a little boring, but we'll do it because we know it's good for us. And we know that it's going to make us sound better. And so being able to, give that reason on why do we do what we do, that's huge. But I think, you have to know first, why do you do what you do? Why are you a teacher? Or why do you want to be a teacher? And I think the other question is, what kind of program do you want to have? I mean, accolades are great. And I'm very proud of the group. It took us 6 years and we played at the state convention and played at Music for All. And that's all great. But that's not really why I do what I do. At the end of the day, I want the students to be able to appreciate music and love music for sure. But can they learn to work with each other? Can they learn to build relationships? Can they learn to, play nicely with the others in the sandbox, especially if they don't agree with each other? Can they have conversations with one another when they don't agree? And how do they navigate those kinds of conversations? And how do they build relationships with people that are different from them? And then can they take that idea and serve others? Another great mentor of mine told me, the seniors looking out for the freshmen, we call it the Santa Claus clause. And I love that. How can we make the freshmen feel like $1 million? And so that's been a big goal of mine over the past several years at my program. And last year, my student leaders came together. They said, hey, can we make goodie bags for the freshmen so that on their first day of school, in their seat, they can have like a little baggie, has a handwritten note from us, welcoming them to the program, has some candy. And I just went, wow, arrival. That's it. What a great idea. And so I said, yes, that's such a great idea. That would be awesome. I don't want you to do that by yourself, because one student told me about it. I said, oh no, we have a team of people. We have lots of people that want to do it. And we think that'd be a great idea. And we have this funny orchestra duck. The duck is our kind of rubber duck is our mascot in our orchestra program. And we had a parent that just made hundreds of these Harrison Orchestra rubber duckies. And so the student said, hey, could we put that in the freshman baggies? And that way they get a little fun treat. And then we can tell them about why the duck is our mascot and just welcome them. And it was so great to see on the first day of school, because we don't have band camp, because we don't have that external entity that connects us 9 through 12. It was so cool for the students, with the freshmen coming in, to look really bewildered and puzzled that there was something nice on their seat, and looking at cards, and then eventually seeing their puzzles looks turn into smiles, because that's just not a normal culture that we do, I think, in any school. I think most high schools, it's, oh, you're a freshman, you're trash. And that's normal. And I remember going to lots of, pep rallies, and they'll say, all right, let's hear it for the freshmen. And you don't hear yay, it's everybody across the school going, boo. And then, finally the seniors are always the loudest because they're the most confident. And they say, yay. And I look around, and I remember talking to the students after the pep rally, that first pep rally I saw, and I said, how sad. We're on the same team. We're trying to get ready for a match against another school, and we're tearing ourselves apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's awful. And how does that make us better? And why would I even want to go to a game if I was a freshman, if I'm just trash? And so, I made it a big point in our program. We're going to do things differently. We operate with class. And the other thing we're going to do is make sure that the freshmen feel like $1 million. And so we'll do an 8th grade night. And that whole 8th grade night, I bring in the older students to sit next to the younger students, so we can do a combined concert and rehearsal and interact with them and play games. But one of the big things I enforce or I discuss with the students is, hey, this is all about making those eighth graders feel like they are $1,000,000. And if you feel like you can't do that, that's okay. Don't show up. Okay. I don't want you there. And they, in the beginning, it was like, oh, that's kind of intimidating, but everybody understands that at this point now that we're in year 6. Um, and it's just an established point. And the students are so good. The older students are so good at taking care of those eighth graders. And then as they come into freshmen, I have students now that are like, hey, can I stay at the end of the day? I know it's the freshman class, 3rd period. Is there anything you need? And I say, yes. There's too many students for me to get to every person. Can you pull some of the kids in the back and you can work with them one-on-one? They're like, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. And the culture has shifted completely. And it didn't happen after a year. And it certainly was really tough right after COVID. But it's just reinforcing that idea of what can we do to help the students that are younger? And then those younger students, they're just in awe of the students that are older and they want to be just like them. And so they start asking questions when they're sophomores going, hey, can I, when I'm old, like when I'm a junior or senior, can I come back and work with the freshman class? Or can I be one of the student conductors and help the freshmen? I'd love to do that. And that's all of their own, own will. I don't force it. I don't even have an application process. It's students that are most interested and they connect because somebody did that for them. And so it's that idea of how can we give back to our students so that those students can give back to the younger students. And that creates this amazing cycle. And sure, there's bumps in the roads, but I think it first has to start with what is your why and what is your philosophy or vision for your program? And what does that look like? What do you want your band program or your choir program or your orchestra program to feel like when you walk into the room? And when I walk in, I know tomorrow morning I'll walk in and there'll be groups of people studying, there'll be some kids hanging out, and there'll be some groups playing. And all of that is great because they take pride in that space. They feel comfortable to get help from older students, whether it's in science or playing a scale. And I know that's the kind of program that I wanted to have. But it took time to build that. And it was really, really difficult. And I almost wanted to quit because I knew the students hated me so much in the beginning.
Koji,
yes.
did any time during that culture change, third position change on the violin?
Absolutely not.
Point taken.
I think it's really great, Koji. I don't mean to interrupt you right here, but like
go ahead.
Maurice spoke to us last week, and I hope we're all hearing the relationship piece of that and the patience. Koji's one of the most patient people I've ever met. I don't know that I could be as strong to just let the kids stand up in class and say, well, you're terrible and we hate you and this is what we don't want. But that was absolutely the right call in that moment because they felt heard and seen. And then you had to show them, okay, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It comes back to your original statement about why we do what we do.
You're right. And the other thing too is by listening to them, I learned a lot of things about them as well on what was valuable to them. And then when they asked me things like, hey, can we do the circle of love? And I was thinking, what the heck is the circle of love? Is this like something musical? Because we need to get better at our instruments. We're not very good, is what I was thinking. And then they explained to me, oh, well, we all get in a circle and we write something nice about each other. And I thought, you mean like a kumbaya hand holding session? And I didn't say that. I said, okay, sure, show me, because I was curious. And it was fascinating to me. So they took up, blank piece of notebook paper. Everybody wrote their name on it. And then they passed the paper to the next person. And, they're all in a circle to the person to the right. And they just wrote one thing about that person that was positive. And then they folded that little line, they passed it to the next person. And it went around the whole circle. And I had never seen anything like it. But the previous director, showed them that. And I thought, wow, I've never seen that. And they valued that time. And because I let them do it, and I said, sure, show me what it's about. They felt so much better after doing that. And it was actually a great exercise. I learned a lot. I thought, wow, this is fantastic. Because the vibe of the program at the time was pretty low. And that just reinvigorated them. And they felt cared for, they felt seen, even if it was, things like, you have nice hair today. I like your eyes. Even those small little comments really helped those kids change their attitude for the day. And they came back the next day looking like they felt better and refreshed. And I ended up using that exercise after those students graduated. Even last year, I thought, this group, they've been working super hard, but boy, they're way too hard on themselves. And they're talking about how they're out of tune on that, seventh position high E or whatever it is that they're playing right now. And so I had to stop the class and I said, hey, we're going to do a new exercise. And we did this exercise and it just changed the morale of the group. So sometimes there's a lot of things that the students can teach us. And that was a great exercise that they taught me. And I never would have known that had I not given them the space to do that. So listening to the students can go a long way. After COVID, we tried something called, or during COVID, when we were doing that online school thing that didn't work for many people, I tried this thing called Motivation Mondays. And so I would find these motivational videos that I thought were kind of motivational, and the whole point was, can the student get out of bed and just do something? Because the bar was low. And I would have reflections. How are you feeling this week? Tell me about one interesting thing you did, or what's one goal that you have for this week? And in parentheses, they're right. It can be get out of bed and show up to class. It can be very simple. But after they started coming back to school, I continued those videos because I asked the students, hey, what did you guys think about that? I wasn't going to continue it. Do you want me to, what did you think? And they said, oh, those were the best. That was the highlight of my week. Can we continue doing those? And I was surprised. So I continued it for a year. And then I was going to take it out because I was like, all right, we're all back in school now. Everything's back to normal. And they're like, oh, no, don't take that away. I love Motivation Monday. It really helps me get through the week. And I thought, wow, okay. So I continued it and I've continued to do it. And it's just a short, maybe 3-minute video. And it can be about how to be kind to one another. It can be about time management. It can be about, how do I work with others? It can be about how do I schedule my own time? All beneficial things for students that they're not going to get in any other class. And then I have a reflection for them. And when I read those reflections, that's what gives me insight into, oh, they're feeling like this week, or oh, a lot of them are going through it in their AP, human class or their APUSH class. And that gives me insight into what are they going through. And then when I tell them about, hey, that was a hilarious statement that you made. Yeah, I bet you thought I wasn't going to read that. They're like, oh, he actually reads those. And they feel like they're cared for too. And so it allowed me to connect with students on an individual basis, especially as the program grew, because I can't get to every kid every day, and have a personal conversation. So those are some small things that really helped me along the way and being able to connect with students. But you're right, at the end of the day, it's what kind of relationship can we build with students and what can we do to meet them where they're at? And then we can take them to where, we know that they can do. Because I think the teachers can usually see what they're capable of. And that's a beautiful thing when the students can't see it, but you can, and then you show them. And then it's, that's one of the magical joys of teaching, I think, too.
Koji, that's it. That is the stuff right there. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
I want to jump. I want to get as much time as we can. So Brian's going to speak for just a couple of minutes about some thoughts for us to maybe take into small groups, into our breakout rooms, and kind of process some of the things that Koji said. We'll come back at the end. And Koji, if we have any time at all, I want you to tell them about what is it? The American Idol thing that you did, the takeoff.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so when we get back, so Brian, please take us into these small groups and launch us there.
Yeah, I've been observing a lot of programs lately, just kind of having this kind of thing in the back of my mind, and I've come to realize that every program has a culture. Culture is a little bit of a buzzword, but they always have, forever and ever. Every program has had a culture. And it's not necessarily a bad culture. It just might be different than what you want. As Koji was just explaining to us, it wasn't necessarily a bad culture that he was walking into. It was just different. He had a different vision for what he thought the kids could do in the program that he wanted to build. So as we split up into small groups, I would like for us to brainstorm a little bit and, well, actually more just share especially those of you who have done something like Koji. You've gone into a program that was different for you. It not necessarily your first program, maybe it was, but the established culture, intentional or not, wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be. And how did you go about making some changes? What were the positive things that you did? What were some things that maybe didn't work, that backfired on you? I think Koji even mentioned maybe a couple of those things. So let's share of those. And then also, if there's nobody that has gone into a culture where culture needed to be changed a bit, maybe you've gone into something that was great. Sometimes going into something that's great is also very difficult to continue the progress, because if we're not progressing, up the hill, we're going downhill real fast. So maybe think about some things like that. And then lastly, if neither of those are true in the group, which I doubt, if you've established a new program, what did you do in that program to start creating a culture that you would be proud of? So those are kind of the three things in that order. And David, if you want to split us up, I think we're ready to go. Or is it not David? Is it
Oh,
Steve?
yeah,
Yep,
no, he
Steve,
got it.
sorry.
He's got
You
it.
got it.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, I hate that cursed timer that comes on there right when we're getting into the nitty gritty of things. But
Yeah,
thank you, everyone. Really appreciate that a lot. Before we go, and I do want Cecilia, if you guys don't mind giving us a little bit of that idea about what is going on with Midwest and some of our crafting culture things for the summer, David and Steve, if you don't mind mentioning some of those. But if you had any things that came up in those small groups, we've got just a couple of minutes right here. Anybody want to share something that they came up with or maybe discovered as they went through that?
Well, Robert was mid-sentence in our small group.
Robert, you want to finish? You got thrown out there.
It was probably not enough time to do it, but in 1981, when I started, I inherited a high school band where it was kind of like the opposite of the situation that Mr. Mori was trying to get, where the seniors kind of thought, okay, now they can really get the freshmen, and almost like a hazing kind of thing.
Hazing.
Now it was their turn, and
Yep.
trying to turn that culture around took time. I wouldn't say we ever got it totally fixed, but improved. But all of these, they're not simple. There's so many questions that I would have, and I'm sure all of you have fascinating stories, as to how you develop that culture. One thing I was wondering with Mr. Mori was, if he was going to do it over again. I would be interested in hearing, like, did he learn anything through his experiences, that would he have done anything differently those first 6 months or so, or done just what he did because that got the good results?
That's great. Koji, what do you think?
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I would have made it, honestly, and to do it again, knowing that there was going to be that much difficulty. I don't know that I would transition a program like that, but if I had to, I would probably approach it pretty similar, and not focusing too much on it has to be this way, and being maybe a little more lenient on what are their traditions, as long as it didn't impede on like the major philosophical ideas. So like, seniors hazing freshmen, for example, that would impede on a major philosophical idea that I had, because I know it's destructive to them and they don't even know it. Because obviously, if the youngest students in our marching bands are bad, then the whole band is bad. So getting them, I would probably have more maybe one-on-one discussions and try to get to know more of the older students. I felt like I had more of a disconnect with the seniors, although I connected with juniors and younger. But I don't know that I would have done a lot differently, because it's hard. That first year is really, really challenging, especially if there's no established respect that, oh, this is a great person coming in. The assumption was I was bad. So I worked really hard to try to gain that respect
But
from the
to a
beginning.
certain extent, it just takes time to
Right.
change the
It
culture.
takes
Takes
time.
time.
It does.
I think one of the things that struck me is some of the things that Koji mentioned that were really powerful were things that I think in the moment I would have felt were a mistake. Like, I'm going to let the kids tell me how to do this, or I'm going to listen to the kids do this, or I'm going to get the. And I think like that idea of being patient is really big. Of allowing, not trying to force and impose the culture, but allow it to grow with your input. And I think that at the core of Servant Leadership Association of Music is that it is not. I think that's why people are like, well, tell us how to do this. Well, I don't know. We don't know how to do it. It's got to be you organically done through you with your students. So,
You know, Bobby,
Koji,
that's at the heart of crafting culture, where all of us, I would venture to guess, we're in that autocratic, do what I say,
mhm,
orchestra program, choir program, band program. And the whole point about crafting culture is shifting from the autocratic and flipping it to student center.
yeah,
And that's the key of what Koji shared with us. And that takes patience. So just as you were saying that, I just threw in that story that I remember Jarrell saying or something when he was with us a few years ago. You know, it takes 26 miles to turn a cruise ship.
oh right,
Right.
yes,
And so even though it takes longer than we think, it doesn't mean that it's not happening properly. Right. What would happen if they tried to turn the cruise ship in 10 miles? Well, there'd probably be a disaster. Right.
very much.
And so sometimes the fact that it takes longer than we want it to doesn't mean that it's not happening at the appropriate pace.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much. I think that's a big thing to take away of like, you're probably doing the right things. May not feel like it in the moment. If I try to lose weight, day number 2 still sucks. Uh, that's just what it is. And I think in teaching, year number 2 still sucks. I don't mean to be that harsh about it, but it's still going to be hard. And then you kind of start to see these slow transformations happening, and that's when it's really fun. So, we were talking about crafting culture. David, talk to us a little bit. I'll get to you, and then I'll throw it to Cecilia really quickly. Can you remind us about some of the dates and places for our? I know we've got crafting culture in Atlanta set. We're working on one in Minnesota, kind of finalizing some dates for that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be ready to share that. We're waiting on some facility confirmations, I think, on that before we can release dates specifically. But here's the skinny is last year GIA published a book, Crafting Culture, and 11 folks on the board contributed to that and talking about the 5 tenets from mindset to, I'm going to leave something out, probably mindset, motivation, character, teacher feedback, motivation. Did I get them all? Cecilia, help me. What did I leave out?
I
I
think
think
that
we
was,
did motivation
that was
twice.
4. We said character. Do we say character?
Yeah.
Motivation,
You would
teacher
think-
feedback.
Yeah,
You would think that we would
I think I
know.
would have all this, but I guess I burned my brain on some of it. But anyway, so the book is available, and so really that's kind of the fundamental foundation of. But the course and training that we're speaking about are 12-hour certification programs where we take deep dives into each of those 5 content areas and the tenets in the chapter and really get hands-on, just the types of things that Koji's talking about, except now the circle of love is going to be embedded into crafting culture because that's an awesome idea. And similar to some other strategies that we talk about of how do we shift from the autocratic to the student centered, and how do we develop those trust relationships so that the key is when we have trust, then our students are willing to take risks. And when we have trust, the music performance elevates. And to build that trust, it takes some things that were not taught in the School of Music.
Yeah. Whoa.
So that's what crafting culture is about. It's a 2-day training, 12 hours of certification, focal points, and we'll have one in Atlanta, hopefully one up in St. Paul, perhaps one out in the Texas region, working on that, and hopefully once all the teacher union elements get resolved in Calgary, we'll be able to launch that one up there. So,
And they're very serious. We don't laugh once. It's just nose to the grindstone the entire time.
We
Except
have no
making sure that-
fun.
Yeah, we have
No
no
fun.
fun.
no fun
Whatsoever. No
Yeah.
fun.
Thank
And,
you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, And
Cecilia,
if
you want to talk
anyone,
about the clinic because it's all related to tonight's topic.
it really is very much related, and we've been talking about, you know, those trust relationships and just relationship building in general, and our focus this year at Midwest in our session, which I'm so excited to share with David and Taylor Watts and Young Kim, who is also on the call, that we're going to be talking about making it their space. I think that a lot of us have learned that gone are the days where we can be the sage on the stage, and that it is all about the one ego in the front of the room. And it really, truly, our session, our goal is to talk with you about how we can empower the student voice and how we can empower their ownership in our program. And I'm just so excited to be able to share that at the Midwest Clinic. And you're going to hear about all the fantastic things that Young does with his program, and to get his students involved and so present in the community, and how that just bolsters the quality of what we're doing from the podium as well.
It's going to be great. And Cecilia, do you remember which day
Yeah, I
that?
put the link. I put the link
We're on
in.
Wednesday morning. Yeah. And David shared the link in the chat, or Wednesday afternoon, sorry, Wednesday, December 17th from 1:30 to 2:30 in West 185. You can't
Which
miss
is our
it.
usual room. I think that's where we've been
It's
the
our
last
room.
3 times.
Yes, it is our
Yeah.
room.
And then just a
Well,
different plug here on that, Bobby, but Tim and I will be also sharing every day at Midwest at 3 p.m. For parent music boosters and directors interested in
awesome.
working in culture in their booster organization. So that's going to be in room 182, I believe, every day at 3.
Well, David, we all have great parents that don't ever complain and are nothing but supportive. So I'm not sure exactly what you're going to be talking about, but great. That'll be 3 o'clock. Where is it again, David? Where should we find you?
Yeah, it's in room 182 West, whatever that
Absolutely.
done in that
Yeah.
section.
I know you were kidding a little bit, Bobby, but that's so true. I mean, we can have a great student culture and have a pretty piss poor parent culture.
Yes.
And, a great parent culture, but not have a great administrative culture. It's all, here we go again.
And the more of those that you layer on top, the better it is. Well, everyone, thank you. Koji, thank you so much for being here. Tim, would you give us some words as we go into this week? We have just a few more weeks before Thanksgiving, and the struggle is real. So give us some thoughts.
Well, first of all, again, Koji, thanks. Good to see you, buddy. And we have so many new people here tonight. John, MB, my gosh, Walt, I see you there. This is great to see all these new people. Come back, join us. It's always a good shift. And I think we all walk away feeling a whole lot better, like we're juiced for the week. I'm going to put a lot of good stuff in this follow-up letter about how important our attitudes are and how we can control them. So again, I think let's give Koji a good hand. Way to go, buddy. You should do stuff on student leadership. You got the right
You
stuff.
should. I think he's got a future.
I don't know
Thanks.
about
future.
You guys
we
are too
love you all, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.